what Autobiographies of the Yogi says, and what the Hoags have tapped into, is that the rishis have known for thousands of years that that they call it the wise ones, know how to create tools to lessen the impact of karma. You still have to go through it to learn your lesson, but there are tools we can use to lessen the impact of it. And that is literally what I believe that the Hoags are doing with their sacred geometry. So I'm going to hand it over to the two of you. I know you have a little bit of a presentation to share, to just open this up a little bit more for us.
Okay, so I will share a slideshow that will start to describe a little more clearly what's going on. Oh boy, there we go. So sacred geometry is totally wrapped up with our consciousness, because what we're talking about with sacred geometry is the way that source expresses itself universally. And when I say universally, I mean everywhere in the universe. If we were to go to some planet where there's a civilization, we wouldn't be able to speak to them with the language I'm speaking now in English, but we would be able to communicate with them through the language of sacred geometry, working with number, working with pattern, cycle, time, angle. All of these aspects of our reality are what are encapsulated by what we call sacred geometry. It's our entire space-time continuum. And it's not something that some of you who don't like math in school, it's a live, visual, experiential thing when we work with sacred geometry. And this is what I'm showing you as one aspect of the way different components of sacred geometry, such as measure, time, and space, relate to each other harmonically. So by that, I mean that the moon, which has a diameter of 2,160 miles, and that's 99.99% accurate, that measure is equal to the precession of the equinoxes divides our grand year into 12 small units. Each one is one of the zodiacal signs. We just are in the process of leaving Pisces and entering Aquarius. And each one of those periods is 2,160 years. Again, the same number of miles in the diameter of the moon. And when you translate that into a three-dimensional geometry, you have a cube, which has 2,160 degrees. So with this knowledge, we can start to interrelate shapes and measure and time. And these are archetypes that have an effect on us as human beings when we relate to those archetypes. Because you see, everything in the universe connects through resonance. Everything is harmonically resonant with everything else constantly. And by pulling the archetypes of those resonant frequencies out, we're able to put them into tools, technologies that have an effect on the body. This is what was doing when he was working with particular metals. And there were more than metals, there were gems. And there were more than gems, there were shapes. And the timing, there's such an involved process. This is what I want to show you, is a picture of all of us. You see, we're like icebergs. And this is what I was sharing with you the other day. So I put these back into my slideshow because, like an iceberg, only 10% of us is seen. The other 90% is hidden under the water. So to take this metaphor a little further, I'm going to flip it on its head, because you see, what we believe today and what science often says is that little bit of reality down at the very bottom of the picture, the tip of the iceberg, is creating the whole rest of the iceberg. But in reality, the rest comes before the tip is showing up. And by that I mean that literally your soul is working through all these different dimensional realities to get down into creating your physical three-dimensional form. But it starts at the level of soul. It starts at the level of source, and then moves through all these dimensions into the 3D physical reality. And something that is really important to understand is that karma is key in keeping us trapped at the three-dimensional tip of the iceberg. The only little bit of you that's dancing around here is not the totality of your being, is not the impermanent aspect of your being. I mean, it is the impermanent aspect. You're the permanent aspect, and you need to discover you. And that's what stripping away the karma allows us to expand into that larger realm.
Yeah, absolutely. You're everything you're saying just it perfectly synthesizes what we've been talking about over the course of the week. So I love the synergy of our work together, and it's really amazing. I Is it okay if I ask a question at
Oh,
this
please, that's
about,
why we're here.
especially about the technology that you've been creating? Can you give us a little bit of an idea of how this even works? Like, how does the 3D technology fit into a little piece that I'm wearing? And I know there's but no inside trade secrets or anything like that. But I mean, like, how does that work? Like, how does that work?
Well, I was going to actually, yesterday, Gail said, put it in the slide that I haven't shared very much, but I'm going to show you what's inside your pendant
Oh my gosh. Okay.
later on. But on the surface, all those patterns, they have a value. And the value is that years ago, I was working with guidance and saying, how can I get the energy of a three-dimensional form? This is a, how do I get the energy to a two-dimensional form? And they said, well, people have been working on that for centuries. That's a really good one. Because you see, guidance is very, very gracious and understanding. That means that if you, like, you have a daughter that's now home from college, but remember when she was 3, 4, 5 years old and playing with coloring books.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go up to her and say, I can color better than you. Here, let me do that for you. It's like you let her discover what it is to stay within the lines, or if she wants to go over the lines, let her go over the lines. It's her drawing, it's her life. And what they did was they gave me that, and yet kind of backing off, and then inside they keep flashing things to me. And so they let me discover that if you take a three-dimensional form like this and you project it from the point, you see you have like a hexagon with lines in it. And then you look at it from the face. If you didn't have parallax, that means the camera's so close to this that you can see the back edges. If you had an infinite light source and you projected this through here, you'd see just a square. And in this direction, you would see a rectangle with two smaller rectangles. Well, these are very particular geometries. When you project these three different perspectives on a flat surface that's non-conductive, and you work with a conductive material on that, and then surround it with a circle. It's very important. The circle creates the unity. The circle introduces phi and pi, which is one of the most important elements of all creation. Pi, the nature of a circle. And when you do that, you're able to work with two-dimensional projections, just like the blueprints of a house will allow a builder to build the entire house. Even though it's all flat, he can turn it into 3D because he's got all the different perspectives. The energy can be created in a way that's 3D energy with a two-dimensional projection. That's what's on the surface and on the inside of your pendant. And I can show you more in a little bit. Does that kind of make sense, what I'm saying?
It totally makes sense. And it's so fascinating. Yes, I mean, I could never re-explain that to someone else, but I'm not meant to, but I get it. And it's fascinating because you really can. Now I've worn other jewelry that has an image of sacred geometry on it, flower of life or whatever it might be. Nowhere, like it's night and day, the experience of it, between what you have created here. Go ahead.
Well, these are stepping stones. These are analogs of a three-dimensional reality. The flower of life, even though they talk about it being, like spheres, they try to force it into 3D, but it's not a 3D dimensional thing. The yin yang is a two-dimensional construct that's meant to teach something. And so is the flower of life.
And another thing about this, and you'll see this slide a little bit further on in the presentation, what's inside of this pendant is really important. And the older pendant that you had, we didn't have all the pieces of what we needed to put in technologically yet. We could put a few of these things in. However, we realized that what we're creating are antenna systems for connection, for that higher level of connection. And so along with those images of what you have on the surface, they are connected inside to a lot of different antenna systems and kinds of things that Gregory's going to explain to you, that many of them are three-dimensional. The majority of these things are three-dimensional inside. So that's why we had to reshape the pendant from the old pendant and have it so that there is space in there to put all of these different antennas inside, so that we could offer something that has the capability of what you're experiencing now that we couldn't do back 15 years ago or whatever it was, when we were making those earlier pendants.
Right. Beautiful. And I'll let you hop onto your presentation. I want to bookmark this point of the antenna and the connection, and we'll maybe can weave that in, this importance between really karma is created when we're disconnected, right? So with the pendant, it really through this system allows us to reconnect. So I'll let you guys continue. Yeah, this is wonderful.
That's totally it. Connection gives you the perspective. It allows you the wisdom to be able to work with karma so that you can move through it and not be pulled by either aspect. And what I mean by that is something we were talking about earlier, is people have this concept of karma being a heavy duty thing that, man, I was bad, I did a stupid thing there, I took something, so something's going to be taken from me. It's kind of like negative retribution. But then we think, well, what about a person who is doing good and trying to really help and doing positive things, working at a hospital, working with kids, and they have good things happening to them? It's almost like good karma, but bad karma, good karma, karma is karma, it's like we were talking about. No matter what flavor, it's either bars of iron or bars of gold. You need to escape all of your doings. Why are you doing? You are not doing to have a better life. You're doing something that is capturing you in the doing, capturing you in the three-dimensional limitation of reality. And by moving to a higher perspective, we can start to allow actions to be coming from a place of beingness. And beingness, the more you start coming from being, the more you start shedding karma.